So, guys, I have to be the bearer of bad news and let everyone know that Julian got arrested a couple days ago. So we're going to have to do this podcast and talk about Julian with Julian from the Off the Top podcast. How you doing, Julian?
It's going good. I'm just very happy that I, Julian, am not arrested, and I didn't spend 7 years in an embassy avoiding being arrested.
Yeah, and for those of you who are keen of thought and keen of what's going on currently with events, then you would know that Julian Assange, which is the co-founder of Wikileaks, just got taken into custody in London a couple days ago from the Ecuadorian embassy that he was staying in, like Julian said, for like 7 years.
It's truly phenomenal that so to understand, every country for the most part has an embassy. I think the US has the most embassies across the world, but Assange was in the Ecuadorian embassy for 7 years. For at that time, he was really under fire from what happened with WikiLeaks and the documents that were being released. Then he was also in there for a rape allegation, and Ecuador, took him in and protected him from the British Guard and the U.S. from the ability to arrest him and extradite him or charge him for the crimes that he had committed.
Exactly. So basically, if we can kind of like chunk it up right now and give you the brief rundown. So right now, what we're looking at is the dude was hiding in London in the Ecuadorian embassy so nobody could go in and get him. Ecuador kind of got sick of his like antics and kind of having a shitty roommate, it seems like. And so they let the British government or the British police department go in and take him out so that he can be either first off, he has basically bail jumping charges against him due to that rape allegation in Sweden. And now they're thinking that he might be extradited to the US because of this British UK-US agreement as far as extradition goes, and then face charges as far as like espionage and things of that nature. And I feel like once you kind of like look into this, it kind of gets more tumultuous and the parts seem to be, it seems to be more complicated than you really think just from looking at it at an eye level view.
And the Ecuadorian president, Moreno, from while I was doing research, a lot of people thought or were thinking that are pro Assange. There's a good grip of people who are pro Assange, essentially because if you aren't familiar with WikiLeaks, what it is, it started, I believe, around 2006, and it has no physical location. It has, a few employees in, an office somewhere, then thousands of expert helpers to get these documents, and they find things, they find the truth, essentially. So they'll find documents that, certain governments try to hide or certain actions. They found like Sarah Palin's emails in the 2008 election. And they had various things that they could use to, just tell the truth and set that free. And so there's a lot of people who are pro Assange for what he did and, unraveling what some governments may be hiding, which, to a certain point of me is like, okay, that's actually kind of cool because in my opinion, right, if you're going to try to hide or declassify documents because it's going to make you look bad or what you were doing was unethical, that's going to come back. It's going to be like karma. It's going to come back to bite you. And so Assange, when he was taken out of this place, it looked like they Supermaned him. They like grabbed him by his legs and his chest, and there's like 12 guys just like holding him out from the embassy to start this process of, either extraditing him, charging him in Britain, and figuring out, what the best strategy was now that they have him in custody.
Yeah, I think something that you mentioned there was super interesting too, in the fact that it was really forcible. So it wasn't like he was not going to go out on his own and say like, all right, guys, like let's try to right these wrongs or like figure this all out together. He was very obdurate of staying in there. So that's why he was forcibly removed. And another thing that I found really interesting is that the days before, about 6 to 10 days before, WikiLeaks was actually tweeting, saying that, Julian will be like taking out. So this was something that they saw coming. Absolutely. And so now we're in this weird spot, because if you kind of know WikiLeaks and you follow the story really well, then you also know that there is this really goofy and weird backup clause or backup mechanism that happens, that they have in place. And so what goes on is that this backup policy that WikiLeaks has is that if Julian Assange is imprisoned, documents that they have not released, but they have still, will be sent out to 100,000 people, which you then would imagine would be leaked promptly. And the reason that they have those 100,000 people to send them out to is just to make sure that those documents are protected and don't just vanish off the face of the earth. But I think that that's almost like, he paints it as a backup, but it almost seems like a doomsday clause in the fact that, the poison pill, if I go down, then there's going to be more than just me paying the price. You know what I'm saying?
I agree. It's like a giant destruction plan, where, he says, if I'm going down, 100,000 of these documents are going out. And the thing about it, it's not like they know what these documents are. If it's just emails, if it's war documents, if it's footage of, bribery, if it's bribery checks being sent. So there's literally thousands of things it could be. It'll be interesting to see how they handle that as they go through this process of charging him. And further, I kind of skipped on it earlier, but a lot of people think the Ecuadorian new President Moreno is, somewhat being bribed on his own. They thought it was a little odd, how quickly it happened for him to be like, you know what, Assange, you're a terrible roommate. You're a little hostile. You're a little awkward. It's time for you to get out of here. So a lot of people thought there's something else at play here, because for a while he was in the embassy, Assange was doing interviews by going out onto the balcony of this building still on the property and just kind of standing there and putting his face in front of people saying, no, you'll never get this.
And another thing that I'm really, really curious about is how they're actually going to go about with the charging of espionage and that process. Because if you remember correctly, in about 2010, WikiLeaks published a large amount of information on the U.S. government and their actions in Afghanistan with the aid of Chelsea Manning, formerly known as Bradley Manning. But at the same time, if they were going to just nail the scapegoat or nail the people that leaked it as far as WikiLeaks goes, another thing that you'd want to mention too is that same sort of dangerous precedent of going after the people that did it themselves, you'd have to then inculpate the New York Times, because they also did publish some of that information as well. So it's not just WikiLeaks on their own. Other people are doing it. So I'm really interested to see what it will be like as far as, how honest are they going to keep everybody? To be fair, looking at this right now, I think it'll be somebody will be made an example of, which that somebody will probably be Julian Assange. And then we'll just go about it as, well, this is a lesson that you don't want to be the person that gets caught doing this, or you don't want to be the get caught red-handed or be the biggest red hand when everything goes down.
That's something I didn't think about. And at the end of the day, to me, the information that WikiLeaks unveils is what it is. It's information. And if there's evidence behind it, there's evidence behind it. You can't refute it. Yeah, you might be ashamed. An example, a very layman's example is, right, if you're cheating on your significant other and someone has hard proof of it, you can't be mad at the friend of the friend who has the footage and say, hey, this is what's happening. And, man or womaned up to tell you. And I think a lot of that time, the stuff they're uncovering was like, here it is. Here's the evidence behind it. Do with what you want, but we're just uncovering the truth. And that's where, the New York Times picks it up and says, hey, this is information, you guys messed up. It's not our fault. But, now that it's public, you'd rather have it come from a credible source with credible opinions than come from a million internet blogs and Reddit and completely thrash you. So it's very interesting to see what will happen, if they do kind of make Assange the scapegoat, or if they pursue other targets or strike a plea deal and try to use him as a weapon, so to speak, against other countries. Not saying, that's going to be very easy to do with someone who can hack any computer and into any documents and find what they need and say they aren't going to play both sides of the ball. But it will be a very interesting case, depending on, how long it takes to stack up these charges and this evidence against him.
Another interesting thing that I think we should talk about, or at least, think about in our own heads, is that there's a very polar relationship that WikiLeaks has with the rest of the reporting outlets and reporting media, in the fact that the main gripe that they have, the main gripe that, Washington Post or New York Times and other productions like that would have against WikiLeaks is that they've been known in the past to not hide identities, which is a very big no-no when it comes to journalism in itself, because the protection of identities, the protection of the identity of the sources of that information is paramount to making sure that the information gets out. Because if you can think about it, if WikiLeaks just cuts and shoots the raw and unedited truth and just puts it in your face, and Julian, the Off the Top podcast, Julian, happens to be named in one of those things, that's his name out there. And so that was another issue that they had as far as the Afghanistan activity. There was about 300 names is what I found in there, that now the people that obviously the information was leaked about can look and say, okay, so we're looking for, Off the Top podcast, Julian, and we have something for him. So I can understand in that way being a very big faux pas, and almost in the sense of being the utmost truthful and utmost veracious, kind of separates you and paints you as a black sheep, even though you were a black sheep already for the amount of stuff and just being WikiLeaks in itself. And then when you did that on top of it, it just created more distance between you and the other media outlets that were trying to deliver the truth in some sort of fashion or degree.
It is truly a brutal process in that nature, because, the people who may be named may have done something wrong, may have been harmful in some way, or they may have been good citizens who gave this information. But you have to think generationally that if your father or your mother, grandma, grandparent, whoever it may be, was named in, the killing of 2 journalists in Afghanistan, then you would be related to that. Someone down the road would connect the name Woody Smith is your dad. Oh, I know what he did. You can't hang out with my son. Or, we don't employ, we're going to look for other candidates, may not say it directly to your face, but there's long-term repercussions of, using exact names to people who may eventually be in witness protection program, or who may have done it because, they needed to get paid. There's a lot of things at play there. And, not saying WikiLeaks is in the wrong, but there's definitely a better way to get that information across and provide evidence when it's necessary.
There is that dichotomy, absolutely, where you have to, tell the truth. And if you edit it at all, then you kind of skew what the actual image or what the actual facts are. And then there's also the fact of you're dealing with people's lives, and there's also ramifications for people coming out and telling the truth. I think that's one thing that's big, and currently with current leaks that are going on, not specifically with ones that do with WikiLeaks, but media outlets and leaks, is that they are very strong and very good at protecting their sources. Even though when they do that, you get a little less of the truth than what's really out there. You get some sort of gradient. And I don't think that that's absolutely wrong in some cases where, you have an informant that's basically providing you information that you can provide to the public because it's important for the public to know certain things, and then, protect them so that they can further their work, or just in the fact of, they did this once and they're not going to do it again, but now they have to live, like you said, Julian, for the rest of their lives or their families' lives, knowing that this is, or people knowing that they did that,
Mm-hmm. And the other thing too, with what WikiLeaks has done and, their acquisition of documents, or so to speak, hacking of servers and computers to get these files, is they changed the internet for a while. In the way, there's security protocols, two-factor authentication, lots of various things that WikiLeaks showed weakness in, and how easy it was to get these documents. We're talking 2006, 2010, 2012, current events within the past decade or a little bit longer, that where we're at today because of WikiLeaks' ability to get this information via the internet and via their sources has made a lot of companies look, internally at how they're doing things. And, that may be good on our end, as there's so much data we put out there that we'd probably like, private or protected. Then it also, once again, kind of creates that dichotomy of there's also companies who now could still be doing malicious things, but have the ability or the know-how of keeping it a little bit more private and a little bit more secure after seeing WikiLeaks go through different companies and governments to pull these harmful documents and share with the public.
I think security is extremely important, especially with the internet. And I think it's taken sometimes too lightly and put on the back burner, just because in the essence, it is a thing of like, when you need it, it's too late. So if you don't need it now, then let's not worry about it and wait until, there's a better opportunity to arise before we start investing heavily into this, capital, so to speak. At the same time, though, I don't think WikiLeaks would ever be, the internet will never be stopped. In the fact of, there will always be people leaking things. There will always be people, you couldn't silence somebody on the internet just because, you wanted to. If they wanted to, just like WikiLeaks have 2,000 servers all over the world. And, if you close one route off to get the information to somebody, then they'll just, go around you in that sense as well. So I think it's going to be something that we're innately going to have to deal with in the future. And so this is going to be a very, very interesting time, I believe, to see, how the world treats this specific case. And I think it's going to kind of like change the game precedingly to see how, the game's actually played. Like how hard are we going to be on these people, and how hard are they going to get on us if the stakes are raised,
Exactly. Right. You can shut down one email for a Netflix trial. And you can shut down one IP for a Netflix trial. But at the end of the day, there's hundreds of thousands of ways to get back to Netflix. You're not going to shut down the internet. But, with that being in regards to, layman's term of what WikiLeaks is doing, there's not a lot, so to speak, that you can do to stop them. As Jordan said, the internet's growing. Information is out there. Older information is being brought to the public. There's thousands of moving parts in this case. And to see what, they do to, is it maybe just, make an example of Assange, like Jordan was saying. So hopefully it's deterring people from doing it, or will it have the reverse impact where someone says, if someone's going to harm, if someone's harming someone for the truth that bad, there must be worse things out there and I'm going to find it. So I'm very curious to see the results of this case in this trial and what the side effects and the outcomes in the long term are of this trial.
Yeah. And if you guys are super interested and you think you have other ideas or things that we didn't think about, definitely go ahead and reach out to us and let us know those things, because we really do enjoy your input and, your thoughts. And some of them are very thought provoking and make me say like, man, I wonder why I didn't think about that earlier while I was doing the podcast. Once again, like, super grateful, super appreciative of, all the growth, continued growth, and all the love that we've been getting. And thanks for listening, guys.